So there's new people in the audience. For anyone who's visiting my channel for the first time, I work alone in the studio here. I don't have a crew or assistant. You can't see my keyboard and mouse because my desk is blocking it. I also read notes from a computer screen you can't see, so don't be alarmed if you hear my keyboard or mouse. With that, Christopher Gelson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell the audience why you wanted me to do this live stream today on December 18th. And if you could, give the audience some background. What did you do in life prior to protectyourchildren.org, and what made you create the website?
Sure. Well, a couple of years ago, I was working full time in the business world, if you will, and the COVID happened and some layoffs happened, and that kind of prompted a new direction. And one of the other directors was a friend of mine, suggested that we start this organization to help protect kids from child molestation, kidnapping, and so Protect Your Children was started about 2 years ago. And we mainly have focused on educating and bringing awareness to the public on the dangers of being online with predators. And then a couple of people that are friends of ours in the organization had brought the Zachary case to our attention, and it really kind of stirred up a passion, really, with many of the directors. At least three of us were very familiar with the case because we are in Tampa, Florida, so we're right near Clearwater. And started looking into the information, and noticed that there was a lot of holes in the story, a lot of lack of reporting, except for on the anniversary. The news would do a little something on it, but no new information was being relayed to the police or any investigators. So we started kind of just jumping online about, this was February of this past year. We started doing some posts and advertising and seeking information. Also, with our searching online, we came across your channel and saw that you had done a video. I guess this was a year or two now ago, and you mentioned the Zachary Bernhardt case. So we kind of reached out to you, and you were kind enough to respond in the comments, which you always do, which is great. Nothing like commenting on someone's video and asking a question and they ignore you. But you always seem to respond to people, which is fantastic. So we thought, with your knowledge and you're looking into the case combined with ours and what we received from the public, it would be beneficial to Zachary and to his case to raise more awareness for taking the time to do this and informing your audience about his case. And we hope that we can stir up some more information, and we have hope that Zach's even listening somehow. We have no reason to believe Zach is dead. We believe that he's very much alive, and that he may be capable of even listening to this or even searching online for information about himself. And if that's the case, then we would like to be able to reach him and offer some hope and some encouragement to him as well. Thank you again.
Yes. So it's a little disappointing that we didn't get to be live, but I will say the video quality should be better, though, so that's the upside. With the live stream, could have been laggy and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
You always refer to yourself as the director and lead teacher. Could you tell the audience about the rest of your staff?
Right, we currently have three directors. I do most of the teaching. The other ones are assistants, and they kind of work also behind the scenes with the business, more of the business aspect of it. So myself and Marie, who is another director, are the ones that we go out and do teaching. We do events, public events, and we try to coordinate volunteers and getting them to come out, and also some efforts for fundraising and different things like that. Mainly, a lot of the work is done online, especially with COVID. So a lot of our emphasis has been online, building up an online presence and raising awareness that way. Hopefully now with COVID behind us, or almost behind us, in a lot of areas, we're going to be able to get back out into the public. So mainly our focus is, like I said, is getting into the schools, which we will be doing in the upcoming year, getting into community centers, We're even looking into Little League. Little League has had an epidemic of issues going on. So we're hoping to branch out into some more areas and bring education and awareness to the dangers of online predators and community predators, frankly, with with different resources that we can provide people.
I'm going to play something from your website for the audience to listen to for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, sorry to hear that, Topher. So, what happened?
My mom talked to Tommy's mom, and then she freaked out and went through Tommy's phone. She found tons of messages to strange girls, and the girls were asking sexual questions.
Okay. You call that talking to Topher.
Yes.
How is reenacting the behavior of a child predator and a victim child helpful, or how does it help people protect children?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. How does what?
Reenacting the behavior of a child predator and a victim child, how does that help people protect children?
Yeah, anybody who listens to Talking with Topher, and it's an animated cartoon, if you will, using real life scenarios. And we think what it does is it teaches parents and other kids some of the tricks and the threats and traps that predators will use, especially online. And so putting in the aspect that we did, you take someone like Topher who's going through a normal life, going to school, going to sports, going to the park, going whatever, and how he may be approached by somebody. Or if there's someone in his life, how he may be approached by that person, what things might be said, and other ideas like that. So, our hope with that, excuse me, is that when parents and kids listen to this, they'll now have aware in their mind, like, okay, wait a minute, if somebody's talking this way or acting a certain way, this could be a red flag. And seeing how Topher reacts to it encourages the child to make right decisions and also to help, keep himself safe. That's kind of our goal with Talking with Topher.
Thank you for that. And a lot of it is common sense, right?
Yeah, most of it is, but with technology today, and that's the big hurdle, if you will. Technology is changing so rapidly, and with the ability for people to make identities, multiple identities, 10 different identities online, could be 50-year-old, could be 10-year-old trying to be older, could be a 60-year-old trying to be 20. It could be anything. It could be male, could be female. You don't really know who's out there today, and that becomes more of an issue now with protecting kids than before. Before all the technology, before all the apps, you were pretty much limited to the people that your kids were around. But with online stuff, you just don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who you're messaging. You think you're talking to a 13-year-old girl. She's got videos, she's got all this stuff, and it looks legit, but you don't really know who's behind that, right? Is it really a 13-year-old girl, or is it somebody who's older trying to trap somebody? And you just don't know. So it becomes more difficult with technology today than it ever was before. And parents, not a lot of parents are aware of this. We speak to a lot of parents who say, wow, I had no idea. I had no idea my child was talking to these people. I had no idea they were messaging this person. I had no idea that this person wasn't who they really were. So a lot of it is just raising awareness and bringing it to the forefront so that parents can monitor exactly how their kids are doing online and who they're chatting with and things like that.
Did you choose the name Topher as part of your own first name, the latter part of
that? Yeah, that's what it was. That's exactly what it was. Nothing fancy there. It's just my name's Christopher, so it was just Topher, and Talking with Topher. And I also do the voice for Topher. Something I've been able to do since I was younger. I think I inhaled too much helium or something when I was younger, but I can do the Topher voice. So it just kind of was a thing that kind of fit together real well.
Could you tell the audience the address for Protect Your Children, Inc. for anyone who might be interested in your services, or a contact number or something like that, or is that available?
Yeah, we because of the nature of what we deal with, we'll put that out privately with people, but they can always reach us through email or through Facebook, and we can evaluate that information. But we deal with a lot of things that come in that are accusatory against certain people, and we don't always know who we're talking to as well. So we try not to just say, "Hey, look, this is where you can come knock on the door."
So
You know,
there's no public address for the
Right.
organization or anything like
It's
that.
available. Yeah, it's available if people wanted to find it, but we try not to just put that out there, so people can come showing up at any time. We've had complaints that have been sent into us, and we've tried to respond in the best way that we can with the information that we get, and some of the responses have not been positive. You can imagine. And again, we don't always know who we're dealing with. It's a very
You don't have to
um,
tell me. I know all about
right. It's a very yeah. It's
identity
a very
theft and all that stuff too.
Yeah, it's a very difficult issue, and a lot of times it raises a lot of anger, and revenge. Um, we are always contacted by, the mom who's saying that are divorced from the dad, and the dad's hurting the child, and then the dad will say, hey, my wife is hurting the child. We try not to get involved in all of that stuff too. We try to stay outside of that, but it does stir up a lot of stuff, and we receive emails and comments that are pretty harsh sometimes. So. Hence the not putting the information out there. But people can reach us, and we can evaluate each. And if somebody would like the information, we can certainly get that to them.
Yeah, you are offering a public service, and that's the only reason why I asked
Mm-hmm.
about a public address. Besides Zachary Bernhardt, what other missing children cases have you worked on, and what did you do to help in those cases?
Yeah, Zachary is actually the first one. Like I said, our mission and our goal really was to prevent kidnapping, and raise awareness and education on the different traps and ways that kids can be protected. But so the Zachary thing was really the first one that we really kind of just put ourselves in the middle of and really started to try to work on it. And that was partially, like I said, because of the location, partially because of the friends of the organization that were impacted by some interactions with Zachary's mother. The other part of it was because of we can say what we feel is questionable on the stories that were put out there. And some of the statements made, I think, kind of stirred up some things. And it just really kind of stirred our hearts. And we really feel like that this case has been forgotten. Not by the family, of course, not by friends, but by the public. And considering that there's still a lot of information to be found and received, we thought it might be the best thing to try to raise more awareness to kind of bring the story back into the forefront. So this is really the first one that we focused on. And like I said, it's mainly because of the location and the interaction of the friends of the organization and their interactions with Zachary's mother.
Okay. Let's begin by talking about Zach's case. He was a child when he was reported missing in 2000. Around 75% of children who are abducted are taken by a relative or acquaintance.
That's right. Yeah, that's a startling stat. Yeah, that is a startling stat. Yeah.
Clearwater Police Chief Slaughter stated that they have more evidence related to Zach's case than all other cases combined. That's a heck of a statement.
Yeah.
So, you have to wonder what they're doing with all that evidence. And I have to say, since I just mentioned Chief Slaughter, for Clearwater PD, I don't see anything that they're doing on his case at all.
Right. Well, and that was another concern that we had, that the case is not. It's been referred to as a cold case, but according to Clearwater Police Department, it's not a cold case. It's still open.
I don't
But
believe that personally.
yeah, but what's happening basically is, and we just read an article on this a couple days ago, that if a tip comes in, they follow it. That's it. That's the extent of it at this point.
That's what they're saying, but they have nothing to show for any of it. Nothing.
Right. No, and they said they've received hundreds of tips, and they've got binders and binders and binders, and they say they've investigated every tip, each one, and it's
But what
produced
do they
nothing.
have to show for it, though? You know?
Right, right. Well, and the truth is, we really don't know. I mean, if a tip turns out to be nothing, they're not notifying the public each time a tip comes out. So really, that we understand the silence because it's an open investigation that they're not talking. But at the same time, it would be good for the public to kind of know that it's still being worked on. But as of a lot of it happens with a lot of cases, unfortunately, the older they get, they don't have detectives sitting at a desk going online and searching stuff and trying to put together angles and details and put the puzzle together. It just kind of falls by the wayside. And we feel like that has happened with Zach's case. As far as we know, there's no one sitting there just actively pursuing information. They're waiting for information to come in from the public. And and the Clearwater Police have said as much. They're saying that they need people to come forward with information so that they can follow it up. So we don't know what's happening really behind the scenes, and I think that's kind of part of the concern that the public has had. We've received many of comments and messages from people that say, "Are the police working this case?" Well, they say they are, but we don't know to the extent of what they're working, how they're working it, and of course, because it's an open investigation, they're not going to share that information, right? Because they don't know who they're talking to, right? So they're not going to share the information. So we really kind of have our hands up in the air and say, we hope they're doing more. We hope they're still looking into different angles. But are they?
Doesn't seem
Question.
like it. This missing person case reminds me of the unsolved Long Island serial killer cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I just pulled something up on the screen for everyone to look at there. It looks like more than one person was involved. And I'm not talking about copycat. I'm talking about people working together. And Shannon Gilbert's case exposed the rest of the LISK cases. As a result, out of spite, Shannon's case was never investigated properly. More recently, Police Chief James Burke and District Attorney Thomas Spada were both arrested and prosecuted for preventing FBI LISK investigations from moving forward. Sometimes it's more than one killer working together, and we've seen cases where sometimes it's more than one killer working together. When Shannon Gilbert dialed 911, she said, "They are trying to kill me." It is believed that she identified at least one person during that 911 call that was never released and that someone who worked for law enforcement was involved. Shannon Gilbert ran to Gus Coletti's house for help, and Gus dialed 911 to help Shannon. Gus Coletti also said Brewer was having a party and that he was told he shouldn't have called the police to help Shannon because now Shannon would get in trouble because he called the police. Both of these facts remain unacknowledged by authorities involved. They pretend there was no party and that no one said Shannon would get in trouble for calling the police. And the 911 calls contain valuable evidence that was ignored as far as we can see. So, before we switch gears and go back to Zach's case, I just wanted to show, I still have something on the screen that the audience is looking at here. But you can see people involved in the Long Island serial killer case: Michael Pack, Joseph Brewer, James Burke, Thomas Spada, and there's a couple other people there. The timeline lines up with Evans Ganthier. The Long Island serial killer were active approximately between 1995 and 2010. And Ganthier was convicted in 2013 for a homicide that happened in 2009. So he would fit in that timeline because there haven't been any recent Long Island serial killings that have been linked to those LISK cases since Ganthier was put in prison for his sentence. But there's a lot of similarities. At least one victim was mutilated and dismembered in the LISK cases, and Evans Ganthier mutilated and dismembered his victim. The suspect contacted victim's family in the LISK cases, and Evans Ganthier also contacted the victim's family. Now that is extremely rare. Not only did he contact the victim's family, but he also implicated the victim's boyfriend. And a suspect in the LISK cases tried to implicate Peter Hackett. Now I know that they say supposedly Peter Hackett admitted to calling the family, but still, these could be people working together or getting ideas from each other. The interesting thing is you could look at 200 or 300, if not more, homicide cases and not find any where the suspect or the killer contacts the victim's family to harass them after the killing. That's just something I don't see. And I've looked at over 100 homicide cases myself and never saw that, with the exception of these two situations, the LISK or the Shannon Gilbert case, and actually it was two different people in the LISK cases. There was another victim who was contacted as well, and then Evans Ganthier. And two other quick little things, and then I'm going to get back to you. Evans Ganthier, he killed his victim, and he showed no remorse, and he only got 25 to life. He's likely to be released around 2038, which is interesting because that's the same exact year that I believe, you know, the Jalbert in the Bernhardt case?
Yes, Kevin Jalbert, yeah.
He gets out in 2038, the same year. So 2038 is going to be a bad year. There's going to be possibly some very bad people getting out of prison in 2038.
Yeah, 2038. Yeah, I'll tell you. You know, and that's another strange thing that like you said, that there seems to be some similarities between the two cases. You know, nothing that's verifiable, right? And at least not with the Zachary Bernhardt case. And that's the part that's most frustrating, right? Is that there's definitely more people involved in this. If you want to believe that, I mean, is it possible that someone was stalking Zachary, stalking the apartment, you know, stalking Leah, his mother, waited for her to go out in the middle of the night, and leave the door unlocked?
Unlikely. Very
right?
unlikely.
I mean, very, very highly unlikely. And then they had a little dog. So you're really asking that somebody would have been watching the apartment, saw her leave, checked the door. Zachary was sleeping upstairs in her room. They had a dog. So the person, a stranger, would have had to come in the house without the dog barking, go up the stairs, get Zach, bring him out of the house, and get away with him, you know, in this window of what Leah says is 15 minutes. It's very highly unlikely. I mean, is it possible? Do predators stalk kids? Yeah, they do. You know, could someone have been watching Leah's habits? Absolutely. But for it to be a stranger abduction, it seems to be very rare. Possibility that could be. And even the police have said that. Chief Slaughter has said that. Some of the previous detectives have said, you know, it's a suspicious disappearance. Which says to me a lot. A suspicious disappearance means, you know, what's the details behind it? We don't know. It's suspicious. Is it really a disappearance? Did he walk off? Was he taken? Was he brought somewhere? There's a lot of questions, you know, and I think like the LISK case, there's more people that know more things that probably were involved and they're not speaking. And when that happens, you end up kind of getting to a standstill, you know.
With the LISK cases, it's not just me, but even investigative journalists and stuff have even said they believe that that's a gated community up in Gilboa Beach. It's in Long Island. And so you can't even get into that neighborhood unless you know the code or the guard lets you through. And I'm sure there's cameras of anyone that goes in or out. And so there's the theory, the leading theory now, is that a group of professional men, wealthy professional men, some of them in law enforcement, likely this guy Burke was one of them, this who ended up being chief and then being prosecuted.
Yeah.
And that this group of people were abusing females and prostitutes, and in some cases they would just kill them. A group of people, not one person, but a group of people.
A group, yeah.
And so I think, at least I hold to that theory with the LISK cases, that it's not one killer, but it's a group of killers. And I also think that there's a small group of people that were involved in Zach's case. And I asked you why you chose today to do the live stream. I don't know if you did you say why to the audience that it's his birthday?
Yeah, we posted that online, but today is Zachary Bernhardt's 30th birthday. He will be missing now for 21 years. And I thought doing this live stream on his birthday would bring some much needed attention to his case, and also as a way to honor him. We personally at Protect Your Children believe that he's alive, as I mentioned before, and that he may be able to even hear this. And our message to him is that people have never stopped looking for you. They've never stopped loving you. One of your cousins wants you to know that you are missed very, very much. This cousin says that you'll know who it is. And we want Zach to know that even today on his 30th birthday, that it's time for him to have a normal life back again. His life was taken from him at 8 years old by no fault of his own. Whatever got things in motion disrupted his life and threw his life on a path that he did not deserve, right? And we want you to know, Zach, that we are here to help you. We are willing to even set up an account, a financial account, to help you get on your feet if that's needed, privately, of course. You don't have to tell your whole story to anybody, but simply coming forward, letting people know that you're no longer missing is a great step, because there's a lot of people that are doing podcasts, doing shows, doing videos. There's, news channels that are still running reports. They're spending money, time, resources, listing you as a missing person. And living as a missing person is not the way to live. You're always looking over your shoulder. There's no peace in that. We want you to have peace. So we want to do this on Zach's 30th birthday as a way to honor him and hopefully bring some hope to people out there that he has not been forgotten.
And I was unaware that it was his birthday, so thank you. You chose the date to do it today, and I think it was a good idea. And that's pretty good. I think we covered a lot quick.
Yeah. And the questions that remain are the theories, right? There's always a theory, and of course theories are a dime a dozen. Everyone's got one, right? But I think what we need to do is look at what's been presented, what's been available, use common sense, as you mentioned before, in reference to protecting people, and start to put pieces together. Now, again, it doesn't matter if Protect Your Children puts it together or Officer UFO puts it together. The reality is that the police are the ones that need to put it together, and they have to pursue this, right? We can reach out to try to locate Zach. We can try to offer help to him, encourage him to come forward. We can encourage family members if they know anything, or maybe there's something that they do know that they didn't think is important that could cause them to kind of come forward. That's what we can do from outside here, right? From outside looking in the case. But ultimately, there is a part of this that's about justice, but it's really about Zach having his life back, right? We believe that God created everybody with a purpose, right? And we don't believe anybody was created to be kidnapped and put through whatever Zach's been through, right? So if you want to take a minute, we can look at some of what the theories are on this, if you want to go down that road for a few minutes.
Of course, yeah, sure.
So the one theory is, of course, the abductor theory, like we mentioned before. Somebody's watching Zach, watching his mom, waits for her to leave, goes inside, past the dog, grabs the kid, gets out, gets away.
Like
Nobody
a
sees.
Jalbert type of character.
Right, exactly, and that's the Kevin Jalbert angle. The Kevin Jalbert angle, if people aren't aware, this guy was a filthy predator who had bragged about murdering kids, raping kids, kidnapping kids. The police have even said that he was trying to cop to things that there was no way he was involved with. So he was clearly a pathological liar. Um, if people want to look up that portion of Zach's story, the family has even commented on it. It is very strange, some of the avenues of the Kevin Jalbert theory. He did used to live at Savannah Trace Apartments, which is where Zach was taken from. He did have this affinity, if you will, in these fantasies about kidnapping and taking children, taking young boys. That's concerning. He led an undercover detective who was posing as a predator, led them to Zach's apartment complex and told him that he had taken a kid from there. Went on to point out the wrong apartment, couldn't describe what Zach was wearing that night, but again, no one knows exactly what Zach was wearing that night. We only have what Leah has said he was wearing that night. Kevin Jalbert had a receipt for a landfill in his vehicle when the police searched it. A landfill that he had visited 2 weeks after Zach disappeared. The police went and searched that landfill, of course, followed up on all those leads. They didn't find evidence of anything, pertaining to Zach. So that's the one theory, that it was the abductor, the Kevin Jalbert kind of guy that went ahead and did it. There's another theory that Zach woke up, saw his mom wasn't there, and he decided to go walk outside and look for her, and then someone just grabbed him. Again, we feel that's very highly unlikely. Even in Clearwater, Florida, which unfortunately is a very high area for sex trafficking, the chance of Zach walking outside in the middle of the night, right into the hands of somebody to kidnap him, we think is very, very slim. There's another theory that he's dead, that his mom killed him, right? That she wanted to go out that night and didn't want to take care of him, and she wanted to make sure he wouldn't wake up, and she may have drugged him or did something, and that she killed him, and then she disposed of his body. That's another theory, okay? And yet there's one final one. The final theory is that this kidnapping was a hoax, that it was staged and set up to look like a kidnapping for attention and money purposes. And that there had to be more than one person involved in this, including someone coming to the apartment to remove Zach and take him somewhere. And that's pretty much the most of them that are out there, the theories. Some of them really get weird. You know how people are online. Everybody's got a theory. But those are the main ones. And if you look down the rabbit hole, you can get lost in a lot of those. But we have to ask ourselves, statistically speaking, what is the most likely?
75%. 75% says it's somebody that acquaintance or relative, which would go into the hoax theory. And you've talked to me about the idea that maybe a relative took him to get him away from the mother, and they were just, weird about it. And instead of doing it the right way and the legal way, they did it that way.
Right. And again, we want to say on the record that we're not accusing Leah of anything. We're not accusing the family of anything. We're certainly just looking at the theories that are out there, what we've received from the public. And this is not unheard of. We hear stories where, there was not too long ago the mother that claimed that, a black guy came in and took her child, and ran off with her. And it turned out that was a lie. She did it to get attention. And to get sympathy from people. There's moms that say, I don't know what happened. I left the house. I came back. My kids were gone, right? And so this does happen. In the case of Zach, it's hard to tell. I mean, one can look at Leah's history and see that there has been a pattern of wanting to get attention. This is all public information that's been put out there by news reports and such. And Leah has had a history of lying. She's had a history of trying to get attention. She has lied about having cancer twice. She lied about her mother, Carol, being dead.
Mm-hmm.
She told that to one of Zach's third grade teachers. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
his grandma died. Well,
Mm-hmm.
grandma's very much alive, right?
Yeah.
She has told landlords that she's got woman cancer. So there has been a history of her telling lies to get attention, to try to get people to be sympathetic. Now, and again, we're not saying she did this, but the theory is if she had staged this, well, let me tell you, it's a crazy way to get attention, but she got it. National attention, tons of money, tons of gifts, tons of sympathy, right? And all of that. So, again, there could be lots of reasons for her to try to get attention. It may not even be, a piece of this puzzle, but it's something that has to be looked at, right? The public knows that they had moved like 10 different times with Zach, been evicted from apartment after apartment after apartment. Leah could not hold a job,
And she
right?
was
And I don't
facing
want to make
eviction,
this
by the way, at
right.
the
She was
time
facing,
of, yeah.
yes, she was facing eviction, and it was filed with the courts 6 days before Zach disappeared that they were being evicted. So family knew they were being evicted, the public knew they were being evicted, and 6 days later, Zach disappears. Leah's able to stay at the apartment for a few more months, and then of course she goes on and she moves out of state, she gets married, changes her name, which again is also raising a lot of red flags with people. If your child is missing, the last thing you want to do is move to a strange place, change your phone number, change your last name, and totally make it so that he could or she could never find you, right?
The police also said she stopped cooperating with the investigation.
Right. After a while, she was keeping contact, regular contact, once a month, and then the police came out publicly and said that she has ceased cooperating and she no longer wanted to participate.
She made a
Now again,
public. Oh, sorry.
okay, so I would say now again that could be multiple reasons. One, because she's convinced that he's gone forever and she's trying to move on, or two, she's hiding something.
Well, she made a
Right?
public
I mean,
statement that it doesn't matter how he disappeared. They just want him back. Well, if you had something to do with him disappearing, of course you're going to say it doesn't matter how he disappeared. Now, from a law enforcement perspective, absolutely it matters how he disappeared, because how else are you going to find him unless you find
right.
out how he disappeared?
That's exactly correct, and that's what it comes down to. You have to look at the circumstances and the people involved on how he disappeared in order to locate him. And so, yeah, I did see the same clip that you're talking about and have a family member come out and say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how he disappeared. We just want to get him back.
Mm-hmm.
No, it absolutely does matter. Now, they're not a law enforcement professional, so maybe they don't know that.
Well, no, to me, that's a sign of her being involved. Another thing, a sign of family being involved, was Grandma saying that she has watched him growing. It's not easy to see him growing up on T-shirts and posters and stuff. The key words in that sentence are watching him grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And she's made other statements that seemed like she was involved as well.
Yeah.
Now, the gentleman who I interviewed, a security officer who met a Zachary Bernhardt in Orlando, if that's the wrong Zachary and we got the wrong Zachary and that's some other person, come forward. Somebody should come forward and say so, and I'll take that video down. But
Absolutely.
But nobody's saying anything. Nobody's saying anything.
Right. And it could be an issue of just not the right people, being exposed to the information, or it could be that this really was, Before we dive into that, I wanted to play a little audio real quick. I think you can hear it from here. This, when you mentioned about the grandmother, this is something else we have received a lot of attention about that really has kind of set wrong with people. In the Discovery, was it ID Discovery, and the episode called About a Boy. Very well done, very put together. Right at the very end, Carol makes a statement. This is Zachary's grandmother.
That's season 8, episode 8, by the way.
Yeah, season 8, episode 8. They can find it on ID Discovery. But Carol made this following statement. Let's see if I can play it right here. Let me see.
Okay, we could barely hear that.
Okay.
So
Let me see
you
if I
go
can-
ahead and reiterate it.
Yeah,
She was
turn that
saying
up.
how that she hopes that if they, if it's okay if they raised him right.
Right, and I'm gonna raise this video because this
You want
audio.
to play it? Okay, I can
Yeah,
pump.
really.
Yeah, I'll pump your volume up on my end as well.
Yeah, I really want people to hear this because
Here, I'm gonna
there are
turn you
two
up.
possibilities. There are two possibilities of why she would make a statement like this, um, and I think it's important to look at that. Let me try to play it one more time. You ready?
Yeah.
I live with this feeling that if you took my grandson to raise him and you raised him right, that's good. But if you took him to be me, I hope he did.
She said she hopes he's
It's
dead.
hard to say. But I hope he's up with God.
Right now, could you hear that?
Yeah, she said that if whoever took him, if they took him to raise him right, then it's good. But if they took him to hurt him, then she hopes he's dead.
And she hopes he's dead.
Yeah.
And that now the grandmother believes that a predator, the stranger abduction theory, that this sexual predator came in the middle of the night, grabbed this kid, and ran off with him.
Well, there's
That's what
nothing.
she's
Yeah, there's nothing else to believe other than implicating her own family.
right. Well, this is what she believes. So for her to say that if you took my grandson to basically care for him and raise him right, that's good. Now here's my question: who in the world would ever think that a predator would kidnap a child with the sole purpose of I just want to love them and give them a great family?
Right.
That's a very odd statement. And then to say, now I understand about the part if he's being hurt, then she hopes he's dead because she doesn't want to think about him going through suffering. I understand that. Some people commented on we put this up on our Facebook page, the text of what she said, and somebody raised a good point. And they said this could be a grandmother who is trying to cope with this, and she's trying to tell herself, hey, maybe it was that woman who just always wanted a child, right? And she's just raising him and taking care of him. Like maybe she's telling herself that in order to be able to cope with the fact that he's missing. I don't know about that because honestly, if you're going to tear a kid away from their family, right from the get-go, you're hurting them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would have to be some twisted thinking going on there. The other side is that some people have said that they think that this statement that she made is a reference to somebody that she knows took him to raise him right because Leah wasn't raising him right.
We only got a couple minutes. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter since it's not live. That way we can get this up to the audience. But before I have you...
Yeah, let's get into the security guard, definitely.
Yeah, before we do that, there was I think it was 4 months after Zach's disappearance, there was another incident at Savannah Trace where a child was abducted. And there was a description that was given, and the description fits the same description as deceased. And another thing I wanted to ask you is they won't release the name of Zachary's father, and that's extremely troubling. If he has nothing to do with it, or there's no, anything like that, or they're not trying to protect him, why not release his name? There's always a red flag when they redact one name and only one name.
Right.
But wouldn't it be ironic if deceased was his father?
Yeah, we've looked at that too, and based upon the account of the anonymous security guard that you've mentioned, somebody that a friend of yours that you trust and have worked with, based upon that account, there are some flags there. There are some very interesting flags. We do know that the sketch of the abductor of the second boy, and I think it was the following year on New Year's Eve. I'm not totally sure on that, but the sketch that was released shows this guy with black hair, long stringy black hair, And I know you had mentioned in a previous video that the deceased at one time.
He always had deceased. Always had stringy. I knew deceased also, by the way, not just coworker.
Yeah.
Not just my ex coworker.
Hmm.
Deceased. He was a real piece of work, I'll tell you. But he always had his hair slicked back and stringy. Now there's a public photo of him where he has it fluffed up.
Right.
That was not the way he normally looked, and not the way he normally had his hair. In fact, he used to pull it back tight in a little tiny ponytail, where he had his hair for a long time. He wore it long on top, a little bit long on top, but shaved around the sides, and he'd pull it back, and it would be slicked back, kind of like at the top. It's kind of hard to explain. I don't know the name of that haircut, but
Yeah, and there's a possibility that there's a connection there. Now, the Clearwater Police have, claim they've looked at both. They've looked at both cases, and they say that they don't see any connection. And but it is very interesting that the sketch and also the information about the deceased, who is known as just Tim, that there's a weird connection there. Something else that really is concerning to us and to the public, and we've received a lot of information on this, is that your friend, the security guard, had brought information to the Clearwater Police Department, right, or had notified them around March of 2018, I'm correct, that, hey, there's this guy, and he's got this friend who says his name is Zach Bernhardt, and he looks like the person that's been missing since like 2000, and here, this is what's happening. I think Zach's being exploited. I think all this is happening. Now, you would think that if the Clearwater Police were notified about that, they would be all over this. They would be sending detectives out. They'd be investigating that one side to the other, up and down, all around, right? What the concern is that the public does not know if that ever took place. According to the security guard that, is your friend, he says he played phone tag with a detective.
do you know what that means? Let me stop you real quick. Do you know what
Yeah.
phone tag means? Because I'm not sure you do. What's it mean?
Well, yeah, phone tag is you called somebody, they didn't answer, they called you, you missed it.
Got it. Yeah, you're
That
right.
was it.
So they
And that
never
was it.
actually talked to. He never actually talked to Collymore.
Right.
First, the way that it happened was a detailed email was sent. So the information got there through a detailed email. In fact, they still have that email. So the information got to them. Then they tried to follow up on that information by calling him back, and they didn't reach him. And then he tried to call her back, and he didn't reach her. And then supposedly she got taken off the case.
Yeah.
She got reassigned. Now, we don't know if she was a detective or just an officer assisting detectives. There's only a handful of detectives, but there's tons of officers who assist
Right,
detectives. So it's not unheard of for an officer, especially if there's tons of leads. They might be doing leads, following up on leads or screening them or something like that. And that's what this was. This would have been a lead.
Yeah, and we just don't know the outcome of that. And again, that's something that I don't know that they would release to the public.
I'll tell you what, though. More recently, I personally sent that same information because he forwarded it to me, and I just so that I could know for myself that it made it there. It more recently got sent again, and it got sent again because there was a female who contacted me about Zach, claiming that she was a relative, and to be honest with you, that information had to be reported to the police. So that information was reported to the police, and at that time, the original message that he sent was kind of sent to them for a second time, just to make sure, to give them a background and make sure they had that information still.
Right.
So, but I know what you were getting at. You were going to talk about how 6 days later, deceased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the interesting part. We have been verified is a member of the family, and they had said that they were never notified about Tim the deceased or that whole angle. Now, I would assume that if the police followed up on it and either they didn't find the information credible or they didn't have any conclusion to it, they're not going to tell the family, raise up the hope, who knows. But we just don't know. I would think that if I was a family member and this kind of information came in, hey, do you ever hear of this guy named Tim? Hey, do you know anything about Orlando? I would think that they would have been contacted. Maybe some members of the family were, but we don't know. But what we do know is 6 days later, after the police are notified, yeah, Tim ends up dead. We don't know how he ended up dead. His obituary, publicly released, says he just died suddenly and unexpectedly, right? Nobody knows if it was a heart attack, a suicide, a drug overdose, a homicide. We don't know.
Or karma.
But we certainly, or karma, one way or another. But the reality is, if Zachary Bernhardt was known by the deceased, and if the deceased was exploiting Zachary, and the police had contacted the deceased, if I'm the deceased, right, I'm scared to death. I'm freaking out. I'm going, oh crap. They're going to realize I've got somebody who's been missing for 17 years here that I've been involved with living at my house. Oh crap. He may commit suicide.
Or,
Let's see. Again,
or fake his death.
What's that?
Or fake his death. That's another
possibility.
possibility.
To go off the grid. We just don't know. Again, another angle that the public has not been made aware of, I think, until this. That's the other reason to do the live stream was this information. And people have said, well, how do you know that the anonymous security guard is telling the truth? Well, the reality is, I don't know. I don't know the guy personally. I don't know you personally. But what I can say is we have no reason to believe it's a lie, right? We have no reason to believe that someone would make up this information and throw a wrench into a whole investigation. It's actually against the law to do something like that. If you make up a story and throw it into an investigation and you cause officers and people to run off in a different direction and it's not true, like we think the probability of that happening is probably zero, right? So we take it at face value what the security guard saw, the interactions that he had, Zach saying his last name was Bernhardt, and then saying, oh, I wasn't supposed to tell you that. Now, there are questions. Some people have said, okay, what happened after that? Did the security guard say, hey, why aren't you supposed to tell me that?
Well, he specified that during the interview.
And did Zach say I'm missing at that point? What happened after that?
He specified during the interview what happened. He said, if I recall, he said that Zach said after he hesitated a moment or so, and then he said, I wasn't supposed to tell you that. And then when he said why, he goes, you don't know? And he didn't know.
And that was it. Now, what didn't he know? And the question is, did Zach tell him at that point, hey, I'm the missing kid?
No, Zach slipped up. It was, Zach was probably relieved that he didn't know.
Exactly, right. And you had mentioned that the deceased had always had to reassure Zach that
yes,
that your friend was not a police officer.
We believe that Zach was trained to avoid police, that if they talked to him, he would lie about his identity and things like that.
Right. And that's interesting because what that says to me is if the interaction was with the Zachary Bernhardt 16 or 17 years after he's reported missing and he's hiding from the police, he's trying to not be found.
Right.
At that point. And, perhaps, and a lot of people said, there's a lot of hesitation about why Zach may not come forward, right? There's a possibility that he is afraid to get in trouble because he has technically not been missing for all this time, and he has led people to believe that he is. The security guard mentioned that there was a marijuana transaction, that Zach was a middleman in all of that. So maybe he's concerned, oh crap,
Yeah, he could have be involved in some crimes that he doesn't want to get caught for. There could be a lot of reasons why he doesn't want to come forward.
And he could be protecting family members.
He could already be wanted under a different name.
Right. And it could be fear. I'm just saying, if I'm Zach at this point in 2016, 2017, and I'm having these conversations, and I know that I'm reported missing, and then I hear the information that a person who was possibly, I say possibly, allegedly exploiting me is now dead, that scares the crap out of me. I'm thinking, wait a minute, how did this guy end up just dead all of a sudden? That's pretty darn close to me, right? That's what I'm thinking. So he could just be scared to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is, again, it deserves to be looked at. And again, maybe Clearwater did look at this. Maybe they did bring out all the
I don't
angles.
think so.
Right?
I'm
And we
not too
just,
high on Clearwater right now, unfortunately, and I'm pro police. So I mean, I'll tell
yeah,
you what. Well, you know what? I'm gonna just interrupt you real quick. I don't normally follow missing person cases. This is the only one I've ever even looked at. Actually, I've looked at maybe two or three, but I have looked at over 100 homicide cases, and you can clearly tell and see the difference between cases that are solved and cases that aren't solved. And there's usually a reason why cases are solved, and there's usually a reason why they're not solved. And a lot of times it has to do with the way they conduct the cases and the investigations.
yeah. No, and I think there's some point to that. And we also obviously are pro police. We don't want to, shine, garbage on Clearwater Police. But it's a hard thing because if you look at it this way, anybody who tries to get information from the Clearwater Police are being told we can't comment because it's an open investigation. And a lot of people, some amateurs, some professional private investigators and whatnot, are trying to get the information to help solve the case. But they're not being told that information because it's an open investigation, right? So therefore, in a way, Clearwater never has to say another thing about this case. They don't have to tell anybody. They can
Right.
just say nothing. They don't have to say a darn thing.
And that's what they're doing.
Possible lead. There's a tip. There's something that they're looking into. All they can say is we pursue every tip that comes in. That's it.
That's what they're doing, it seems like. But the little bit that they do talk, it seems like they're putting their foot in their mouth. When you make the comment that you have more evidence for his case than all other cases combined, that's a lot of evidence. My understanding was
Yeah.
he made a reference that they have a warehouse full of evidence for his case. What are
Right.
you doing with all that evidence?
And they claim that it all just doesn't tie together. And I'm not sure if it was Chief Slaughter or Detective Wallach. There was somebody that was on the news on one of the anniversaries, and he had said, and it was very striking the way he said it. When the interviewer, and the news was a news interview, actually, News 9 or something, one of the local ones, had interviewed him and said, do you still have cooperation with the mother, so on and so forth? And he says something to the effect of, not as much as we'd like. At some point, she decided she didn't really want to communicate no more. And then
Yeah,
she said, well,
that's
are
what
you
he said.
following up on some stuff? And he said exactly this. He goes, well, this case runs, and he paused, and he said, deep. And he said it just like that. Like, it runs deep. And a little smirk on his face. Like there's so much behind all of this that the public does not know. Now, my thing is, are they still investigating whatever all that is, right? What do you mean it runs deep? In other words, it's deeper than what people think. Okay, well, that sounds like hints and clues. That sounds like leads and tips.
Last thoughts. We got about 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, last thoughts is we encourage people to share this video, share the information, especially if you're in Clearwater or Orlando. We have had some reports of a person with using another name, Hanson, first name Zach, around the same age, who has lived also in the same town as his mother Leah. Zach's mother Leah has lived in Hawaii and also left that town in Hawaii at the same time as Leah did. That strikes us as something that needs to be investigated. Could be a coincidence on many fronts, but it needs to be looked at. But we really just want to end this and let Zach know that you are loved, you are not forgotten about. You probably already know that, you've read it, you've seen it. But we want you to know that we're here to help in any way that we can. Mentioned before that we will set up a Give, Send, Go account, private, to help with financing if it means getting on your feet. If it's drug rehabilitation or something like that we will help you find that. We are committed to helping you get on your feet and getting the life back that you deserve to have. If you're scared, if you're afraid, find some way to contact somebody. Missing and exploited children. And just say, hey, do it from another email, but just say, look, I'm the one, I'm not missing anymore. Try to do something to come forward, because living as a missing person, you don't have a life. And you're cared about, you're loved, you're prayed for by millions, and we know this. And a lot of people are not ready to give up on you yet.
Is
So
the
if
Zach
you can see-
Hanson in Michigan?
There was a an address in Michigan, which was not far from Ann Arbor.
And that's the Zach
Chelsea.
Hansen, right?
Right, right.
And
And that was interesting because Leah had also lived in Chelsea and Ann Arbor.
prior
For,
to the disappearance of Zach, talk about that for a minute to the audience.
what's that?
Go ahead and talk about that for a minute to the audience.
Which part about?
Prior to his disappearance, at one point, mom lived in Michigan, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, really quickly, Leah had a whole string of bad relationships. One of those was to a guy who lived in outside of Chelsea or Ann Arbor, Michigan, right in that area. She had lived there for a while. The story goes that she had a daughter with this person. This person was not Zachary's father, but there was a relationship there that came to an abrupt end with some other events where Leah had lost custody of that daughter. So Leah lost custody to the father, yes. Yeah, of the daughter. The daughter was basically taken and the father was given full custody.
Okay.
The courts found that Leah was not able to properly take care of the daughter. Now, Zach was young at that time and he was still with her. That's another question that could be looked at as why. But this Zach Hansen has around the same age, not far from Chelsea, not far from Ann Arbor, right in that area of Michigan. Also,
Your phone's sending interference into the stream because it's too close to the.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you'll hear it in the show.
Oh, cool. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, basically who we feel is the same Zach Hansen was listed as living in Kailua, Hawaii, for a period of time.
Really? Because Leah lived in Hawaii also for a period of time.
Oh, see, interesting.
See, I knew
Yeah.
that there were some things that you and I were going to end up putting together. And
Yeah.
so there was, Leah had the history in Michigan before Zach disappeared with the gentleman who ended up taking custody of her daughter, which would be Zach's half-sister, correct? And
Yeah.
now there's a Zach Hansen that fits the general description of our Zachary missing Bernhardt in Michigan.
Yeah, it's the same, around the same age. The date of birth is actually listed as exactly 6 months to the day, which is interesting. It's listed as June 18th instead of December 18th, which I thought was kind of strange. Again, could be a coincidence. Unable to locate social media profiles. Everything is private. We have not been able to find a picture of this person, so there's no way to directly compare it. But you know, Leah's last name is Hansen. That's public information. Zach was Zach. So to have a Zach Hansen around this, exact age to be turning 30 in June. So just about the same age as the missing Zach, living in the same city. In fact, about 12 minutes. We looked at it 12 minutes from where Leah lived.
And her ex in Michigan took care of Zach sometimes, right? When Leah went away.
Yes, he did. So he reluctantly did it for a weekend one time when Leah had disappeared, but there were a couple of occasions where the half-sister's father did take care of Zach. So they did know, there was a little bit of a relationship there.
Interesting.
So there's definitely, and again, we don't know if this Zach Hansen is Zachary Bernhardt, but there's so much, and I know we're about out of time here, but
and then the Hawaii, you said there was something with Hawaii, and then the mom lived in Hawaii. So yeah, that's all interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 10 or 15 minutes. And something else to note is that Leah moves back from Hawaii to Florida, and she ends up living 15 minutes from the deceased.
In the Orlando area.
In the Orlando area.
See, in my mind, it all ties together.
Yeah.
And Zach, in order to avoid detection, would have to move around, you would think, a little bit at least, possibly from state to state. Yeah. Well, we're out of time. Chris Gelson, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciated it. And his organization is Protect Your Children, Inc., and there will be a link in the description for his channel and his website.
All right. Well, thank you for allowing us to be here. And protectyourchildren.org. People can go there and find all the free resources that we have available, and you can find ways to help our cause. And we just ask that you again, share this information, put it out there, use common sense, and hopefully we can bring Zach home.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.